Marketti, a mad painter, get to paint you a picture of history that most never get to see. Howdy, folks. I hope y'all are having a good evening. This is a mad painter, and I'm here with Marketti, and this is Open Canvas, and we're on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. If you're not in the chat room, you're missing half the show. Come check us out. Got some nice people in there. You can meet new friends, people who have the same kind of ideas that you do, and some people that ain't even close to it. We just encourage don't bring in your boxing gloves. We'd rather bare knuckle it, wouldn't we, Mark? People are going to scare the chat room now, aren't they?
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be trying to get people to come in there, you know.
Okay, well, I will be doing that tonight.
Yeah, I got a reason for being grumpy though.
Okay. Yeah. How are things with your eye?
Oh, they're good. I can see.
Okay.
You know, so I had a little operation done on my eye today, so.
Okay.
And I'm glad it's radio because it looks like somebody beat me up, you know.
Okay. All right. Well, healing's what we want. So, yeah. I did want to, before we get to our guest, I did want to apologize to Thomas and Bruce about not being able to finish the show on Friday. It's just kind of tacky not being able to finish it, but I had to make a phone call and get the laundry and all this other stuff done, to do a early morning road trip for Saturday, and I just want to thank Janet and Nadine for all the help and support, Alan for being understanding, Hannah and little Alan. I think you need to tune in each week for some supplemental history lessons. And then there's Melissa, and we walked through the door holding hands, and we got stronger. And thank you, Charlie, for all you did. And before anyone starts posting on Facebook that Marky Mark has added a new native, wife. Melissa's my sister, so you don't need to start those rumors. So anyhow, Tom's, have you had one of those like long drives, real sore back? You have to kind of look for like one of those massage therapists.
I'm going to a chiropractor tomorrow morning.
Okay, yeah, I've kind of been looking for one of those kind of people. I have to kind of look for one, or maybe I already found one. But anyhow, speaking of native babes, there's a Hopewell Culture Conference in Chillicothe, Ohio in about 3 weeks. And one of the conference organizers, and who will also be presenting, is with us for the first hour. And I think he is making about his third or fourth appearance with us. And he is the magnetometer pioneer, Dr. JARROD Burks. So hi, JARROD. How you doing?
Good. Hey, Mark.
Hey. Okay, so you have this conference on Friday and Saturday, May 13th and 14th, and they're pretty much going on all day, right?
On Friday, it's in the afternoon, and then there's an evening program at 7-ish, and Saturday it's all day with another evening program.
Okay. And where in Chillicothe is it being held?
The conference will be at the Christopher Conference Center, which is on North Bridge Street there, just
Oh,
north.
okay, so that's right by the mound you excavated.
Yeah, down the road. Chillicothe is not a very big place, so just about everywhere there is by the mound I excavated.
Okay, so it's kind of like it's in the northern part of town, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Just off Route 23, little
Okay.
ways.
Okay. Good. Okay. And one of the unique aspects of this conference is that they aren't held annually. This is the first major Hopewell conference in about 20 years. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean we're often talking and presenting Hopewell at our annual conference, but every couple decades there's a big bad Hopewell conference where everything in the conference is all about Hopewell. This one is being hosted by the Ohio Archaeological Council, as was the previous one. And I think both of them actually, well, they're in Chillicothe, so they're really the Chillicothe Conference on Hopewell. Yeah, and it's just something that Hopewell scholars get together and do about every couple decades.
Okay. And I think about last June, third week of June, we had Paul Pacheco on talking about a view from the core and Ohio Hopewell Community Organization books that he edited. And if people went out and bought copies, many of the contributing authors to those books are going to be speakers. And you have put together an impressive lineup. Who are some of the speakers? Like Paul is actually going to be one of the speakers.
Yep. Paul will be there, and he'll be talking about some of our Hopewell settlement research of the last 10 years or so. The idea is for this conference to be kind of an update of what's gone on since the last one. So most of the topics being presented are relatively new research, like Paul's. Mm-hmm. There are a number of other people we're all sort of students of one particular guy at Ohio State University, Bill Dancy, and he'll be there. So this will be kind of like a family reunion for us. So Paul and I and Deanne Weimer, who studies paleoethnobotany, or the food remains of the Hopewell, she'll be there. And just looking at the list, I mean, it's a pretty long list. I don't know if you want me to go through all of them, but
oh no, I'm just Paul's been a guest, and he's really done a lot of work with the settlement patterns of the Hopewell. Has he found some updated information?
Well, he'll be presenting on the Browns Bottom work we did from 2005 until like 2011 or so. So that was a group effort by Paul, myself, and Deanne Weimer. They would bring their field schools, archaeology field schools, to Ohio, and I would join them there down in Ross County. And we would study a couple of little Hopewell settlements there on a farm in Ross County, Ohio.
Is that the one near the harness mound?
Right. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So.
Yep. So that's a neat one because before we got working on that in 2005, there weren't really all that many structures, Hopewell building foundations, that had ever been uncovered, and we found 3 there. So that really kind of changed our ideas about how the Hopewell lived and what was really impressive about that site. I don't want to give away all Paul's thunder, but
Okay.
the houses are really big there. They're over 40 feet. One of them's over 40 feet across.
Wow.
So by today's standards, that's not huge, but certainly by standards back then, that's pretty big. But as it turns out, what we're discovering as we continue researching these Hopewell settlements is that the houses are a lot bigger than we thought they were. And maybe part of the reason that we've had a hard time finding them is we've been thinking too small.
Okay. So that's one of the reasons to update is some of the housing patterns are much larger than originally thought.
Well, the houses themselves are, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Okay,
Yeah,
and, okay. What I'm sure Deanne is going to have some really interesting information about the food and prehistoric plants. She's just a character
yeah.
in herself. She's really one of the experts in these prehistoric plants. She's interesting to work with. What's her angle on her discussion?
Well, let's see. The title of her talk is Yes, Virginia, the Hopewell had been food producers. So that should give you a sense of what her talk's going to be like. Okay. She's a character, but her contention is that the Hopewell, while they weren't maybe farmers in the sense of we think of farmers today, they didn't have corn, so they didn't have huge, vast fields of one kind of plant, but they were producing their own food in the form of plants, and there's several different species they grew that some of which we don't really use today anymore, but there's this one plant called Chenopodium. You might not know it by that name, but the Hopewell were known to have used that pretty extensively, and today we call it quinoa. So I bet a lot of folks out there know that name. You can get it in just about any grocery store these days, but it's a tiny little seed, and if you get enough of those, in one container, you can cook up some interesting food with that. So seems like the Hopewell were growing Chenopodium and a couple other plants in pretty good-sized gardens, at least, if not a little bit bigger than a garden size, but not anywhere near the size we do agriculture today.
Okay, so agriculture will be discussed, because I don't think when you've been on, or some of the other Hopewell scholars have been guests, I don't think we've really gotten into.
No, we never really have.
No. So that's an interesting aspect to this conference.
Yeah, and there won't be that. I myself
assumed they were hunter-gatherers.
Well, they are still doing that for sure. And in fact, even the folks, well, we still do that today. And we eat out of the grocery store. Yeah, there's still a huge contingent of our.
Yeah, it's just a little bit different.
Yeah, but I mean, there's still a big contingent of our population that gets a significant amount of their food from the woods, be it morel mushrooms or the deer that they harvest every year, or there are all kinds of stuff that people harvest out of the woods even still today. So it's definitely a continuum. And the Hopewell are down there a little lower on the continuum, meaning that they're spending a lot of time out in the woods still, gathering and collecting and bringing home. But they're also producing food. And what really sets the Hopewell apart, I think, from previous groups, say the Adena, you may recognize that name, is that I don't know that they could make it through the year all that well without this food that they're producing and storing. And that's what allows them to hang around in one place all year round, is that they're spending a lot of time storing food for the winter. So we find big storage pits at their settlements and substantial houses that with lots of evidence of cooking in big pits, for feasts and all those things you might expect for people who live in the same spot year round. Just imagine how pretty nasty the trash problem might get, if you live in the same spot all year round. we have trash collectors come pick up our trash, but they didn't back then. So these settlements have a fair bit of trash that builds up on them too.
Okay. One of the speakers is going to be discussing the Hopewell in the hinterlands. Forgot who was doing that presentation, but we usually think of the Hopewell or Adena living in the river valleys, and this is going to be a discussion, kind of in the more hilly area of Ohio, away from the major river valleys.
Which presentation is that? I'm not sure.
Was the Hopewell in the hinterlands?
Well, yeah, I heard that part, but who's presenting it? I don't see that presentation. There's some folks talking about Hopewell in northeastern Ohio, and let's see, somebody in northwestern Ohio.
Snyder and Johnson.
It's a poster, right? So this is another project of Paul, Deanne, and I's, and this is a site that I brought our group to, and it's not that far away from the Saddle River. It's maybe 10 miles away, but it is well off the beaten track in the county that's just south of Columbus, Ohio. So it's in farmland today, and we will hear, this is our newest Hopewell settlement we've been working on, where we've got a house, a structure, and some cooking pits and some pottery and, the remains of everyday life out there away from the Saddle River. And the thing is, Mark, there are thousands of Hopewell settlements all around us here in central Ohio, most of which nobody's ever documented before. So this is a good example of one of these small settlements that just has never made the news yet.
Okay, cool. Okay, let's see who. Hively and Horn are going to be there, and they aren't presenting at the same time, but both.
They are presenting at the same time. I think that schedule I sent you, it just has the first authors listed. So, for example, Paul Pacheco's paper is also co-authored by me and Deanne Weimer. And Ray Hively's paper on Saturday morning, I think, is co-authored with Bob Horn. The other Horn name you see is a different person.
Okay. That's the confusion. But they have provided the documentation that the octagon mounds was. Unusually precise for we can't even do it today.
Well, I think we can do it today, but so Hively and Horn were one of the first researchers to discover some of the interesting alignments there at the Newark earthworks, in particular at the octagon. For example, the way that the octagon aligns to the maximum moonrise on the eastern horizon every 18.6 years. So that's one of the things they published. There are a lot of other alignments they note from the octagon there and some other earthworks. And their latest thing is how these earthworks align to the surrounding landscape. And I suspect that's what they're going to be talking about. I saw one of their talks a couple years ago, and they've moved beyond Newark, and they're looking at other sites, some down in Ross County, around Chillicothe and beyond.
So that's they'll be getting to archaeoastronomy then.
Yeah, their paper will be one of the archaeoastronomy papers, right?
Okay, cool. Okay, sounds like you have a very nice variety of topics and lecturers.
Yeah, and there'll be some papers, as with the first Chillicothe conference, which was back in the 70s, there'll be some papers that pull in information from outside of Ohio, including, and I'm looking forward to this one, an update on, let's see, where is that paper? Looking at the schedule here.
Is that the Michigan one?
Well, there's somebody's going to talk about the Pinson Mound site.
Ooh.
Which is in Tennessee, a big earthwork site with some enclosures. It has a very large mound at it, much taller than the Ohio mounds, but not quite as long. And that site looks like it ought to belong in the Ohio Valley, but it's down in Tennessee. So they've been doing some geophysical survey there, and I'm hoping they'll talk about that, and we'll get to see some new evidence from the Pinson Mound site. Another fella is going to talk about Scott Keith. He's going to talk about the Leak site, which I think is in Georgia, and it actually has some strong connections with sites in Ohio, including pottery that looks like, it. I think the pottery is from the Leak site, and it's in Ohio, a couple of different places, and also in southern Indiana. So people and stuff are moving up and down the Mississippi River Valley there, or maybe to the east of it, between Ohio and parts south. So Scott will be sharing sort of a summary of all things new from the Leak site, which is kind of exciting.
Cool. Okay, and Brett Ruby's paper sounds intriguing. Doing some updates on the Hopewell Mound Group.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually did some of the magnetometer work there that laid the foundation for Brett's paper. Is that correct?
Yep. So
Okay.
in 2012 or so, I did about 70 acres of magnetic survey there at Hopewell Mound Group. And one of the things we found is that the circle enclosure there has associated with it a post. So the circle is a ditch and embankment, an earthen, construction. But in addition to the earthen part, it also has a circle of posts that used to be there. And as of 2012, it was the biggest post circle we knew of. That may change here shortly based on some new data I just saw this year. But Brett's going to talk about excavating some of these post features at the Great Circle at Hopewell Mound Group. Now, our survey in 2012 wasn't the first to discover posts at the Great Circle. That was back in probably 2001 or so, when I was working at the park there. My boss, who was the park archaeologist,
All right, this is messing up here. Escape is just being a pain. It would let me pick up Mark, but it wouldn't let me pick up the server. Mark, we're live now.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get Jared back now.
Okay. Well, this is.
There we go. There. Well, he's ringing anyway. There he is.
Hey guys.
That was the strangest thing.
Must be the Hopewell Sprites.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't gone offline in 3 days with Skype. And that was just weird. When I come back, it wouldn't let me. It let me pick up Mark, but neither you or the studio.
Huh, crazy.
Okay, so it
had no clue where it went off.
We were just talking about the Hopewell Mound Group and the post circles. So, is there, like, what kind of time period are we talking about with the post circles?
Like, when is it happening?
No, about what time period is, like, 200 BC
No, more like AD 200 to 400
Okay.
for those at Hopewell Mound Group. The post circles are an old kind of thing, and there was one underneath that mound at North Bridge Street Mound in Chillicothe, and that dated to, of course, that was part of a building, but it still is an outer circle of posts that dated to about AD 1, and I suspect it probably goes back into the BC range, but maybe not as far back as 200 BC.
Okay.
What do you think these poles were for?
You always ask the hard questions. It's not it's not a bad question. It's just a tricky one to answer. That's
well,
like
I have my own reasons for asking it. I know it's kind of a strange question when you're talking.
Well, no, it's a perfectly good question, and it's just like, what are these circular earthworks for, or these square earthworks for? And we can't tell you exactly what they're for. Some of them may be used for studying alignments or observing alignments. Others are a way to just mark off space. In a lot of cases, the posts get pulled and replaced by earthen berms, so they change from wood to dirt, but there's still a circular enclosure there. But imagine 1,700 years ago, when you don't have steel axes or chainsaws, cutting down posts that are bigger than telephone poles. Not only would it have been hard to cut down the tree, but then you have to haul it all the way back to wherever it is you're going to put it up. So you have this.
And they didn't have horses.
No, they did not. So you've got this 500-600 pound log you're dragging along, and then you have to figure out how to get it to stand upright. So you have to dig a very big hole. It's not much wider than the post itself. And then you have to try to get it standing upright so it'll fit in the hole. There's a lot of engineering that must have gone into creating these post circles, and they're just the beginning of the enclosure, because eventually they get taken down and become earthen enclosures on the same spot. So anyhow, what's your idea? Shoot away. I want to know what you think these are.
Well, on some of these smaller ones, what give me the idea is around Stonehenge. There was a circle of posts around Stonehenge that are placed so many feet apart and so far away from Stonehenge. I believe they might have actually covered it with the skins, almost as an tent.
Well, certainly some of these post circles in Ohio were small enough to be the walls of buildings, like the one that's underneath the mound we excavated a couple years ago. Now, there was a big center post there, other interior support posts and features. That one was a building. But the one at Hopewell Mound Group is over 300 feet across. There are no interior support posts that we're aware of or anything like that. That one's not a building. And there are even bigger post circles, as we're beginning to learn. So I would imagine either a wall or just the posts themselves with nothing on them being out there, if you have to imagine anything.
Okay. Yeah, Jared, Brad Lepper is giving a couple presentations as well.
As far as I know, only one.
Oh, one. Okay. And what's his topic?
Well, he's giving the public lecture on Friday night, and it's titled "Who Were the Hopewell?" So beyond that, I don't know what he's talking about. But I suspect it'll range broadly and talk about all those things that we think go into being Hopewell. It's definitely open to the public. It's free. The idea is to make it appealing to a large, broad audience, non-experts. A lot of these papers, by the way, are going to be academic kind of in scope. So, if you do go to some of these talks, be prepared to try to decipher academic lingo Um, I'll try to keep mine more available to the broader audience, since that's about all I can speak to anyhow. But
Well, you're bringing information to light about the Americas that most people never get a chance to hear about.
yeah, and it's like right here in our own backyard. If you live in the Ohio Valley, anywhere around Ohio, Kentucky, Southern Indiana, West Virginia, Western Pennsylvania, even Southern Michigan. This is where this group, the Hopewell, and it's different branches of the Hopewell family tree, so to speak, but they were all participating in this way of life that involved the construction of big mounds that cover the dead. And they used these interesting materials like copper from the Great Lakes and mica from the Blue Ridge Mountains down south. And just about every mound has at least one conch shell under it, a great big shell cup that comes from the Gulf of Mexico probably. But the Hopewell were really keen on collecting weird stuff. And I suppose there are a lot of us out there that do that. I collect magnetic data sets from earthwork sites. That's pretty weird. Other people collect cars or old motorcycles or comic books. And the Hopewell were really into the sharp things and the shiny things that surrounded them. So there are a lot of teeth at Hopewell sites, from grizzly bear canines. Can you imagine how hard it was to get a canine out of a grizzly bear? I don't think I would want to try, but they had it. They also had fossilized shark's teeth that were collecting, those great big ones you can get down south. There was the jaw of a barracuda in the big mound at Hopewell Mound Group. Again, probably not something you'd want to get from a live barracuda. Those things are ferocious too. So they were really, really keen on teeth and claws. What Chris Carr, who's another participant in the conference, would call the power points, of animals, the parts of the animals that have the most power, the teeth and the claws. So that's a big component of what it means to be Hopewell, having that stuff. But they also were interested in collecting things that were weird in other ways, such as this mica stuff. We don't have any mica in Ohio naturally. And for those who don't know what mica is, it looks a lot like a mirror. It's often see-through or sort of shiny. So it would be as close as they could have gotten back then to what a mirror is today. Kind of looks like water, or maybe even like the sky. If you cut it into a circle, it kind of looks like the moon. So we don't know exactly what they thought it represented, but they brought so much of it back from North Carolina that they were able to cover entire mounds with a layer of this mica stuff. And it's pretty thin. It's some of the pieces are as thick as construction paper, and others are like a stack of construction paper. But imagine, hauling that stuff all the way back to Ohio and then using it to cover a mound of dirt. That would have been a pretty shiny mound by the time they were done covering it, for sure. So cool. They did some neat stuff.
Yeah. What was the purpose of covering a mound with the mica?
Dude, I have no idea. You'll have to come listen to Chris Carr talk. He has some interesting ideas about some of these things that we think are strange today, but maybe weren't so strange back then. The title of his talk, which maybe will be enticing, is Scioto Hopewell Concepts of Soul-like Essences in Humans. Mortuary Evidence in Light of Historic Woodland and Plains Native American Concepts. So this is some weighty stuff. Very hard to study using archaeology, since what we dig up is rocks and potsherds and somebody's dinner from 2,000 years ago. It's pretty hard to dig up a soul-like essence of a human. So he's taking the archaeological data and he's using what we know from the ethnographic record, what was written down about the Native American groups, who were studied at contact, and he's extending that back into the past to see, if it fits what we know about the archaeological record from 2,000 years ago. So Chris has been doing that kind of thing for, I don't know, 20 years now. He's got some interesting ideas that are fun to listen to.
Okay. So, I think since you were here last, you've co-authored a paper on the a lost coil of the serpent in the Serpent Mound.
Oh, I don't remember when the last time was that I talked to you guys, but
The last fall.
I think it came out before that. But
I don't think we discussed it.
yeah, there was a discovery that we made in 2012 actually, so it goes back a ways. In a magnetometer survey I did at Serpent Mound, we found what looks to be an undulation of the serpent that was erased in antiquity. So that project, me doing the magnetic survey there, was part of a larger group research project at Hopewell Mount, or at Serpent Mound, in which we were studying various aspects of the serpent. I did the magnetic survey. Another team took cores, soil cores, from all along the serpent there. So there were, I don't even remember, 12 or 15 cores, maybe more, where they pulled up, a tube of soil out of the serpent to study the layering in there. And hopefully we had hoped to get samples of charcoal that we could radiocarbon date. And we did. So we ran 6 or 7 charcoal samples for radiocarbon dating. And what was most remarkable about that, Mark, was, and I was shocked when I heard this because it almost never works out this nicely. All of the dates came back almost exactly the same. Usually when you run radiocarbon dates from charcoal at archaeology sites, every date is different from every other date, which makes it hard to figure out what it all means. But in this case, all of our dates were about the same, and they all come from charcoal that we found in the layer just below the serpent. So it's the last layer of dirt that saw the light of day before the serpent was built. And all of the dates came out to be about 300 BC or so, which, as you probably know, is the era when the Adena were doing their thing in the Ohio Valley. Now that's quite a bit earlier than what we think the age of the serpent was. Before we did our work there, the going idea was that the serpent was built about AD 1000. So 1,300 years later, and that would be during Fort Ancient times. Those are the corn agriculturalists. So this really shakes it up quite a bit, and it actually kind of takes the age of the serpent back to where originally everybody thought it was before the Fort Ancient date was run. So whether the serpent dates to 300 BC or AD 1000 or to 10 million, who knows when, we still don't know, I'm sure. But what these new dates tell us is that the story at Serpent Mound is a lot harder to figure out than running a few radiocarbon dates. And right now, the answer that we have is that the serpent was probably built at least 2,000 years ago. And there's evidence that it was changed over time with this undulation of the serpent that was erased and that we detected in the magnetic survey. So it's possible that parts of the serpent date to different eras, or that the serpent was maintained, over the time when it was there on that hilltop. So there may not be just one answer, which is kind of I think the best story, that the serpent is a complicated thing, that it's changed through time, probably meant different things to different people after it was built.
I'm glad it didn't become a golf course.
Yeah, me too. It'd be a really small golf course. It'd be a putt-putt course.
Oh yeah, it would be a small one. But
yeah.
You know what I mean?
That
it actually got preserved. I'm so happy that it has.
Yeah, that's it's quite a remarkable story, the preservation of Serpent Mound. It goes way back to the 1880s. And it's one of the first archaeological parks in the United States, set up solely to preserve an archaeological site. And we have the ladies of Boston to thank for that and their money-raising efforts. So quite a neat story.
Cool. And Jared, you've also been out with a drone at Snake Den. That's a really, I don't know, it's beyond fascinating, intriguing. I don't know what adjective to use, but that's one of the neatest places, and you're doing a lot of work up there. It's surrounded by that henge all the way around the hilltop. What was going on at the Snake Den Mound Group?
So Snake Den is a hilltop earthwork site, and Ohio has quite a few of those. While we don't have a lot of really high hills, we have plenty of low hills in the southern part and the eastern part of the state. And often on the tops of some of these hills, you'll find these mounds that cover burials. And that's what the Snake Den group is. It's 3 mounds, including 1 stone mound. But it also has at least 2 small geometric enclosures. And in the 1890s, when the first excavations were done there, which turned out to be the last excavations until recently, they recorded that the small enclosures were circles. So when we went back, I was out there starting in 2007 running the magnetometer. I found that one of the small circles is actually a squircle, or a square with rounded corners. So that's a pretty unique shape that we know probably dates to the beginnings of Hopewell time, maybe around AD 1 or so. It could be a little bit later. And so that was a big surprise to find at this mound group. The reason that Snake Den became so famous, it's sort of faded from everybody's recollection these days until our recent work, but it was pretty darn famous in the late 1800s, early 1900s, because the archaeologists found silver nuggets in the mound. And this is one of those, could this ever actually happen in reality stories? But the archaeologists showed up at the site in the 1890s, and they got permission from the farmer. And the farmer said, well, you know, if you find any gold, you have to stop digging and tell me about it. And, you know, you can just imagine the archaeologists rolling their eyes, and, like we do today, and saying, yeah, sure, if we find gold, we'll stop and let you know, because we never find gold in Ohio. So they were digging along, and within a week or two, they found this small cluster of burned human remains. So it was a burial, and with it were these silver nuggets. And at the time, silver had never been found at a Hopewell site before. So the archaeologist, he actually, I don't know if this was the right thing or the wrong thing to do, but he took them from the site without telling the farmer, and he went to Columbus, which is about 25 miles away, and he had somebody look at them to determine if they were silver or not. You know, he wanted to make sure it was actually silver before he got kicked off the site. And while he was gone, some local guy narked on him and told the farmer that he had found silver, and then he ran off to Columbus with it. And so when he got back, the farmer said, okay, I know what you did, and you're out of here. Gave him like a day or two to finish up, and booted him off the site. So that's what, you know, in our circles, in archaeology circles, that's what Snake Den is famous for. No archaeologist had been back there to do any work until 2007, when I showed up with the magnetometer. So as it turns out, Snake Den is even more interesting than silver nuggets and that sort of stuff, because after we started doing our survey, we found that squircle, and then we discovered that the whole hilltop is surrounded by a ditch and embankment. Today they're pretty low, can't really see them anymore, but it's about 700 feet across, this enclosure surrounding the hilltop. And then the magnetometer detected these two lines of burned things that sort of cross over the outer ditch embankment. And I had no idea what they were. They looked like they should be something archaeological, but I'd never seen anything like that. They were these magnetic blobs. Imagine, if you will, you've probably never tried to imagine a magnetic map before, but imagine this weird black and white map that kind of looks like an aerial photograph of the moon. And on it are these lines of little dark blobs that are evenly spaced. And you think, that can't possibly be natural, because I've never seen that before on the zillions of magnetic surveys I've done. So we excavated a couple of them in the last couple of years, and they're pits that were dug into the ground at some point in the past, and there was rock in them. It's been burned, and there's charcoal in there, wood charcoal. So we know there's some kind of archaeological feature. One of them we dug up last year, I think it was, had a big boulder in it, about, I don't know, a foot or foot and a half across. So the question, though, is, how old are they, and what the heck are they, and why are they in this nice straight line that's cutting through our earthwork site? We ran a radiocarbon date, and get this, Mark, they turned out to be 900 BC, which, if you're keeping track out there, you may know is about, I don't know, 800 or 900 years before the Hopewell. So they're pretty darn old.
Yeah, is that Adena or?
No, it's before Adena.
Archaic?
It's kind of right at one of our boundaries. It's about when mounds first started to be built in the Ohio Valley. We don't really have any radiocarbon dates from mounds that are that old, but our oldest dates are about 800 BC. So it's right about at the beginning of mound building. It's before this thing we call Adena. The Adena built the really tall mounds in the Ohio Valley. And it's right at the tail end of this time period we referred to as the late Archaic period, which is really when people started doing strange things with the dead, taking them places and doing things with them, burying them separate from the settlements and that sort of stuff. So the late Archaic is really when I think the kernel of this strange, what seems strange to us, this mortuary ceremonial behavior started. And maybe Snake Den is one of those places where it first got going on a big scale. And we have the magnetometer to thank for that. We never would have found those things without that magnetic map. So that's kind of cool, and why Snake Den is fun. The other thing that's really cool about Snake Den is the landowners are just awesome. They are so interested in what we're doing, and they've set aside the parcel that contains the earthworks, so it's a different parcel should they want to donate it or sell it to a conservancy organization in the future. They've gotten a conservation easement on the property to protect it from houses going in. So there are some real progressive folks that are interested in learning more about the past.
Cool. Jared, we're down to about 3 minutes left. You've also done a lot of work that's revealing a bunch of earthworks in Pickaway County. With all the work you're doing there and finding out how many of these hidden earthworks are along the Scioto River, are we looking at a much larger population than originally thought?
No, I don't think so, because there are just as I don't think it's a larger population. Pickaway County is north of Ross County, and Ross County is sort of the mecca of earthwork sites. There are a lot of known earthwork sites in Ross County. And while there are quite a few in Pickaway County, there's only one really big one in Pickaway, and all of these new ones we've been finding are small earthwork sites. So if earthworks are a critical component of your life in that time period, you think there would be plenty. I mean, we find there's settlements all over the place in Pickaway County, and yet there just aren't that many known earthworks, certainly not many known big ones. So I think what we're discovering is that there are lots of settlements out there. Then they're pretty small, but there are also lots of earthworks out there, and these are probably the local ceremonial sites that folks used on a more regular basis. And the great big sites are the community centers, and for some reason there are a ton of them in Ross County, and then there are a few more sprinkled here and there, such as at Newark Earthworks in Newark, Ohio, and there's one at Circleville there in Pickaway County. And there are plenty more, scattered across southern Ohio as well. So I think that the landscape in southern Ohio is just full of these little earthwork sites, and we're going to find a lot more once we start looking harder.
Okay, Jared, we're down to about a minute. The conference is Friday and Saturday, May 13th and 14th in Chillicothe, Ohio. We can put that in the chat room. Is there a website? I have one, the midwesternarchaeology.org.
Well, that's not the right one. If the website is functioning, somebody hacked it recently, so it was down. But
it's probably the same people that put us off.
Skype, yeah. Well, it's the Ohio Archaeological Council that's hosting it, and you can go to their website.
All right. Hey, we'll be back in